Hi, I'm Mark Rutan from Nomad Boatbuilding. Welcome to my boat shop. Over the next series of videos, we're going to be looking at restoring this 1950s era Chestnut canoe. So this canoe is known as the Chestnut 50-pound special. Some people call it a Bob's special or bantam. In the early days of Chestnut canoes, you used a telegraph in order to put in your orders to Chestnut, and so there would be different names for the different grades of canoes. Bob's and bantam were actually telegraph codes that were used to specify that you wanted this 50-pound special canoe in either first grade or the second grade of finish. By the time this was built, I believe Chestnut probably abandoned first and second grade finishes, and they're just producing canoes in one grade because the company was definitely going into its decline at that point. Now this canoe required an awful lot of repairs. At first glance it looked like it was in pretty good shape. That was mainly because it hadn't been left out to suffer a lot of weathering. However, it did have a lot of structural damage. The inwales were destroyed. They're broken in multiple places. There were a number of rib ends that were in rough shape. So I think I replaced somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 rib ends on this boat. The stems were rotten at the end, so those needed some attention. The inwales were rotten at the ends. The RUBRAILS were in bad shape all around, so they needed replacement. The keel was also in bad shape. The powder post beetles had gotten to this boat, and there were a number of elements that had been damaged by that. The seats were never very nicely made, but they had beetle damage. I wasn't able to record absolutely everything that happened during the restoration of this boat. I do this for a living, and I have to try and get the job done in a timely manner, and so I can't always take time to get the camera rolling and record every little detail. I'll do my best to sort of educate you along the way as to how I went about things, and you might find there's some footage from other canoe restorations that work their way in here to help fill the gaps. The first job in a canoe restoration is really doing a good thorough survey and figuring out what it is that needs fixing. If you have a clear picture, it'll be easier to decide what the next job needs to be. For instance, I needed to do a lot of rib end repairs, and I knew the inwales needed replacing, so it made sense to just pull them out entirely and get them out of my way. However, sometimes leaving parts in place that will eventually be removed can be useful in your process. I can't tell you exactly what's the best thing to do. It really comes with experience, and frankly, you change your mind, you learn new things all the time. Sometimes you regret decisions you made earlier as you move through the process. So to get started, we're going to be taking a lot of this apart. We're going to be removing the inwales, the breast hooks, the seats, the center thwart, kind of stripping it down to a bare hull. To do that, I'm going to have to remove planking all along the sheer of this canoe, and I'm going to try and preserve as much original material in this canoe as I can. I won't be doing that with a lot of what I call sheer structure because it's just too far gone and it isn't worth it. But in terms of the planking and the rib ends, I don't want to start ripping stuff out. I prefer to do rib repairs as opposed to replacements, because even if you get the same species of wood, trying to get it to look the same is impossible. You'll see in one of these videos that I did some repairs to the rib ends using the same species of wood, and it looks entirely different night and day. But I used some faux finishing techniques to try and make those ribs look like they hadn't been repaired. You can still see that the repair is there, but it's not glaring at you. This is possibly the most important but most overlooked part of the canoe restoration process: cleaning your boat. I recommend a stiff but soft bristle brush and a mild detergent like dish soap. If you're going to be doing any revarnishing, trisodium phosphate is a really good idea. It will actually etch your varnish and allow for a better bond. It's very important to try and dislodge all the dirt that's in there. Use your hose nozzle set on a jet function and really try and blast all that junk out of your boat. Get up underneath the breast hook, along the stems, chase it down towards the center of the boat so you can flush it out. I don't recommend you using a pressure washer for doing this unless you have a particularly weak one that you can use on a very low setting. You can do more damage than good.
While your canoe is upside down and drying, it's not a bad time to attend to the stem bands. Now usually there's paint stuck in these screw heads, so using a small awl, I would start to clean that out first. Using my awl, I try and work into the corners of this screw head profile. This is a Robertson screw, or square drive. Cleaning those corners out is very important. Next, you want to take a screwdriver that fits your screws, and you want to just give them a sharp tap. Not too hard, just enough to try and break any bond that might exist. Getting the screws out is best done with something that can apply a lot of pressure and leverage. In this case, a brace and bit fitted with the proper size bit. That way you can really lean into it and get a good firm grip on the screw, especially if the screw head's a little bit stripped. And I start by just gentle wiggling to try and break that bond. You can see this screw is just spinning freely. Now if you have a screw that's just spinning freely, you might be able to get a pair of nippers on it. Look at that. And that screw has suffered from galvanic degradation right there. You can see how it's corroded, not broken. I lucked out on this canoe, but on most canoes you have to use the same process that we used on the stem bands for getting out the fasteners. Make sure that all your screw heads are clear of any paint and dirt. It's a good idea to shock them with the screwdriver and hammer like you saw before, and often a brace and bit is the best way to get out stubborn screws. In this case the screws are in good shape and I was able to remove them all with an impact driver, but that's not often the case. Notice how I used that quick grip clamp to hold the rub rail in place while I removed the fasteners. If I didn't do that, that rub rail would be popping off there and flopping all over the place. If I try to keep the rub rails, that could easily damage them. And when you're working alone like I do, sometimes it's a good idea to imagine if you had another person in the room, what would they be doing right at this moment to assist you? In this case, another guy would be hanging onto those gunnels and keeping them from falling off. Thinking through the process like this can not only help you to avoid making stupid mistakes, but it might lead to some interesting bits of innovation that you can rely on later on in future projects. The next step in my repair process is removing the shear planking. I need to get access to all of the rib ends, and I also need to get at the fasteners that are holding the breast hooks in. These are my primary tools for taking apart a lot of the parts of the canoe. The pry bar, I like to keep it sharpened practically to a knife edge, and so that's really great for sneaking underneath tacks, for prying planking away from the stems, and for prying the ribs away from the inwales. These nippers I've got the corner ground out of, and that allows me to sneak it underneath tack heads a little more effectively. Between the three I get at just about anything. Pulling some tacks and taking the shear planks off. Get under the tack, I try and give it a lift, and sometimes I gotta come from both sides to pop it out just a little bit. And I can take the nippers, and if I'm lucky, they stay put. And I usually put my tool underneath the nippers to brace the planking so I don't split it out. But it is buried afterwards. And I've got a little shop-made tack lifter here, but I don't find that it works nearly as well, and I feel it like makes a bigger hole in the planking. I'm trying to pry those guys out, so I prefer this method. I've been doing it this way a long time. Although it's been a while since I've done a canoe, so I'm a little rusty at it today. I'm putting my hand on the back side and giving some pressure on the back side of the rib here. Keep the canoe from rocking around. Now on some boats, if this planking is really messed up, I'll just cut a 2-inch swath along the top and remove that, and then put some different planking in its place. This boat is in pretty nice shape. I kind of like to not do that with it. I can't get white cedar out where I am. I can only use red cedar, though I do have a small supply of white on hand. I'd like to keep it all looking fairly original if I can. Now, the reason I'm pulling these planks off is because I'm going to replace the in-wales in their entirety. And there's a few rib ends that need some attention. So I need to expose those a little bit more. So there's that plank. Got one little tack over here holding it on, steel tack. There we go. Planking's in pretty good shape. We'll try and save it. Steel fastener again. Come on, there we go. And to release all these rib ends, most of the time I'm just coming in here with this tool and try and get right behind the tack. This guy's very lightly fastened, so I only got one tack per rib, which is odd. Usually there's two. No, that's not letting me do it. And usually I try and pry the rib forward a little bit and then push it back in and get that tack to pop out. I'd rather pull it out that way. And so again, I use the tool to protect the wood. I pry against the little pry bar here with my nippers. Sometimes you can just feel this is white cedar, and sometimes it can look perfectly fine, and it's not until you actually start working on it that you can feel that the wood is kind of rotted a bit. It's particularly spongy, but it's really soft stuff to start with, so it'd be hard to tell. Should take me about, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes to get the rest of that run of planking off and get the ribs released. And then I can pop the whole shear structure right out and start my repairs. Okay, I already tried to get this rusty screw out with an impact driver and it wouldn't come. So I'll show you the way I do it. That's really just to shock the screw. And I get in there with my brace and bit, put it on tighten. Try and tighten it just a little bit and try and get it to wiggle ever so slightly. There. Saw it move just a smidge. And then putting it into reverse and putting a lot of weight on it. Boom. Out she comes. On this side, my screw head broke off, so here's my secret weapon. I've got this is basically a roll pin, and I cut some little saw teeth into the end, but I cut them in so that it cuts with the drill going in reverse. So
that's it for the first part of this canoe restoration series. This video is really all about just tearing things apart, and that's an awful lot of the job of boat repair is just taking things apart. Now, you can't just go swinging at it with a sledgehammer. You have to think about, what am I going to keep? What are we going to get rid of but still needs to stay here for now? It's a slow, methodical process. That's one of the things that's kind of fun about it. Sometimes you learn the hard way that you should have left something behind a little bit longer. But anyhow, that's all part of the learning, and that's all part of the fun. The thing to remember is every project's different. Every project presents new challenges. This is not intended to cover absolutely every aspect of canoe restoration. We're really just looking at the different challenges that two specific projects were presenting for me. So there are other things that can come up. There's other ways to deal with stuff, but this is what these two projects required, and I think there's some useful stuff in there, some hopefully educational stuff. The next video we'll move on to actually doing some repairs to things. I hope you'll come back and join me for the next one. And if you're having fun and you want to see more, maybe you can help me out. Come over to Patreon, be one of my supporters. Every little bit helps. I'd like to be able to put more and more time into doing these videos. So please subscribe and tap that bell so you know when the next video is up. Thanks for watching.